Good morning, Barb. How are you today?
Fantastic. How are you, Dave?
I'm really, really good. I read your article for the October Hub, loved it, and I really want to dive in. I know my big word I saw in there a lot, and I want to talk about it right off the top is inflammation. Explain that to folks. Let's get right into this today. I know you're a busy, busy person.
All right. So, inflammation is a massive global issue, and it can affect any organ system, any part of our body, any part of our life, and a lot of everyday things contribute to that inflammation. And people will go, well, like, what is it? So, anything that ends in the word itis is inflammation. Okay. So, otite, when it's the ears, arthritis. Okay. So, all of those things are inflammation, and inflammation in the right place is actually a really good thing. It's a life saving infection fighting type of mechanism. But unfortunately, with the way we live as a global society nowadays, there are so many things that are contributing to a chronic state of inflammation. That's when it becomes destructive and damaging, because the body starts out. So, for instance, if you've got a wear and tear injury, your body is sending specific nutrients, specific messengers to that site to try and repair it. But if your diet's not great, if you have a lot of sugar in your diet or foods that turn to sugar, it's going to ramp up the level of inflammation, and it actually starts to destroy that tissue and the surrounding area. And so if that doesn't get calmed down, it just propagates more damage. So that's where we have to look at, okay, what am I doing? What am I, and people can have the best diet in the world. They can truly be stellar eaters. But if they're not managing their stress levels, guess what? Inflammation is still going to win.
Is sugar the number one factor in inflammation?
I would
'Cause-
say stress and then sugar,
okay,
because you can have a crappy diet, but if you manage your stress really well, then that sugar is not going to be as harmful to your body as it is to somebody that's also stressed. Okay, so it's a balancing act, but I would say the biggest controllable factor absolutely is our intake of sugar and the excess sugar that's in our bloodstreams. And there are so many really easy and positive ways that we can be influencing that, and still having some moderation and balance. I'm not saying that people can't have anything that they enjoy as a treat. We have so many traditions and family events and that people, it's like, oh, I can't wait to get there and try Aunt Mary's, apple crisp or whatever it is. Everybody's got their sort of kryptonite when it comes to a food that they enjoy. But it's the chronic everyday choices that people are making. Think that, a treat can be 1 to 3 times a day. So it's finding that moderation and balance. And if somebody is in relatively good health, and we've talked about the 80-20 balance before, if 80% of your choices are good choices, the body, if it's in a healthy state, will basically be able to forgive more readily that other 20% of bad choices. But our balance is much more the other way. It's more, 20% good choices and the other 80% is bad. And that happens more and more when people are stressed. You start to reach for those comfort foods,
that's what I was
right?
just going to
It's
say.
it's this loop cycle. And we're talking a bit about my concussion in May, and so really sort of gone down that rabbit hole quite deeply, studying and researching a lot from quite a few well educated doctors in that manner. And it's just been really, really mind blowing that, inflammation in the brain, for instance. And with the concussion, obviously there's the physical damage, right? But people don't think about things like dementias necessarily as being aggravated by inflammatory conditions, depression, anxiety, ADHD, ADD, all of those things are actually a brain that's, either depressed or overexcited, being damaged by inflammation. So 10% of the brain is neurons. The other 90% are glial cells, and those glial cells are informed through the gut. So it's like, think about that for a second. If your diet is crap and 90% of that information and that nutrition is, I mean, that's crazy. That is what the singular factor that could be influencing how your brain functions. And it's just it's something, it's a sobering thing to think about. At any given time, 20% of your oxygen levels and 20% of your nutrients are fueling your brain, and yet your brain's only 2% of your body weight. So, when you start to think about how important that is, but what is going on in the gut, having the right microbiome, that's also regulating and calming inflammation. Your vagal tone, that vagus nerve, and all of the organ systems, that's informing. And that's, the great communicator between your gut and brain. So inflammation, it's a massive topic. You probably won't talk to anybody that doesn't have some form of inflammation or some level of pain in their life. And when we look at pain levels, and then we look at the types of things that people are reaching for to live with that pain on a daily basis, and they reach for NSAIDs, non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs. And those actually increase your inflammation in the long run. Damage the stomach lining, and it's the list kind of goes on and on, what happens to the body when people overuse those types of drugs. So, the topic is massive. We really have to get into learning how we can regulate our diet, and that sort of loop back to metabolic balance, and just changing your eating at every meal, starting every meal with 2 bites of protein. That stimulates the body to produce a hormone, the pancreas to produce glucagon instead of stimulating insulin. So, when we think of trying to control blood sugar levels, which we know are the leading cause of inflammatory conditions in the body, it's a pretty massive, takeaway. Our animal fats in our diet. We get too much omega-6 in our diet, and omega-6 is pro-inflammatory. It increases inflammation, and our balance of omega-3s over omega-6s is the wrong way. People are getting this much omega-6 and this much omega-3, and we need to switch that around. So it's, there's a lot to learn about what we can do with diet to mitigate inflammation. But certainly we have to look at the stress levels really seriously as well, because that's probably the biggest contributor.
My take on this too is when you were talking about the stress level, and then you go to the comfort food or the sugars because maybe you feel empty, you're overstressed. I think, to me, that seems like the critical moment where take the walk and then come back and get something to eat. Think it through first, because I think that's, and I always go to this, that I'm going to go to exercise because I think that's a critical component as well as a proper diet. But there's that moment in time where you're super stressed and you just need to walk away and literally walk. You know what I mean? Let the body get working again, and then you can come back. You're probably going to make a much more healthier choice in something you eat, because in that moment of stress, you just want that comfort. You want that to go away. So to make it go away, folks, I'm going to tell you again, go for a walk. You're probably going to come back and make a much more sensible choice. Now, maybe not the perfect choice, but you're going to feel like you did something to help relieve the stress naturally before you're putting something else into your body. And I agree with you 100% about diet. It's so critical. And like you said, there's so many different areas of inflammation. And I think on the next show, I want to get into that a bit, because like you said about arthritis, you know what I mean? Like, for some people, it's hard even to walk, but we've got to look at alternatives to get them a little busier, right? And how much of that, like when you change your diet, and I know you, with your own experiences, when you change that diet, how much, I don't think you can pick a number, but how much of that inflammation will actually dissipate? Or like, are you looking at 50%, 60%, depending on the level you're already at? Or is there a number in there that's plausible?
I think it depends on whether somebody is getting the right fuel for their body. You can change your diet and be eating healthy food, and those foods still might not be the appropriate food for your body. So it's good to sort of understand if there are any underlying food sensitivities, intolerances, or allergies. But if those things are addressed along with the dietary changes and lifestyle changes, for myself, within 2 weeks, I would say my pain reduction was 95% reduced.
Wow,
And that
that's
was
huge.
after 15 years of thinking that I was chained to that because I was eating healthy, right? It just wasn't necessarily in the right balance. And a few of the foods were not my friends. And they were still healthy foods. But tomatoes for me are a super, super inflammatory food. And, the nightshade vegetables, for a lot of people. So your white potatoes, your tomatoes, your eggplant, and your peppers. Those are the main nightshades. But, I encourage anybody with any form of arthritis to take that food group out of their diet. And who hasn't been enjoying the bounty in, Ontario of all of these tomatoes and all of these fresh foods. But if you find your pain levels are getting worse or your digestive system's acting up or you're getting more acid reflux, guess what, folks? Inflammation. Set them aside for a couple of weeks. See if that changes. And, it's neat. It's a very inexpensive way to test the body, to see what its response is to it and to see whether those are contributing factors. So we love our food. There's no doubt about it. But, I love your conversation there about the importance of the exercise, because those feel good hormones, the prostaglandins, that it's just so important that people take that time, because not only are they moving, but they're breathing, right? Hopefully connecting with nature, and that oxygenation is calming the system down. That's bringing your cortisol levels down. I mean, we have to have proper sleep hygiene as well. People need to get sleep. If you're not sleeping properly, cortisol levels go up, stress levels just circle around, your sugars go up, and that means more inflammation. So it's not any one factor, it's a variety of factors, but we can absolutely do better then. We can make little improvements for each individual. And it's what I love about doing consultations with people, because you can look at their overall lifestyle and you can give them those little steps to start them going in the right direction. Because to give them a huge plan all at once, sometimes it's just like, well, no, too many changes. I cannot do that. It's too stressful for them. But you can just slowly work into those positive things, and as the body responds, that in its end of itself is a great reinforcement.
My last question. I know you got to go, but it kind of came to me. And so you've got the stress level, you've got the inflammation. Is there a secondary link to cravings with that? Because when you're stressed, you want to eat stuff that's comforting. Does the inflammation activate that as well? Just curious, because I'm thinking, well, when you brought up the nightshades, and who doesn't love a good tomato? But if it's bothering you, but you still crave it every so often, right?
Right.
So
right.
It's almost your body's wanting that inflammation. And maybe that's the way our bodies have changed over the years, I guess. I don't know. But I just thought that was it kind of piqued my curiosity, because when we crave something, sometimes we're stressed.
Right.
Is it that, or is it the inflammation saying, oh, could really use that right now too, right? But you're fueling the inflammation rather than deterring it.
And that, a lot of that has to do with a person's internal microbiome. Okay, so the terrain, the type of bacteria or lack of friendly bacteria they have in their system, and they want to be fueled as well, and they crave sugar. So anything that feeds them quickly makes them happy. But unfortunately, anybody that has any sort of fungal or bacterial or viral thing, they also love it when we make non-healthy choices. So it does take a really determined person not to feed the body that when it's like a toddler having a tantrum. Yeah, you just want to get them to stop. But you know that by giving in the easy way, you're just going to get a repeat performance of that behavior. And as they get bigger, it gets harder to manage. So the quicker you get on top of it and understand that we can be causing damage that is not necessarily irreparable, but damage that's much, much harder to fix. And it's just contributing to the problem you're already having when you're making those poor choices with the diet. So not saying don't have any of that treat if that's really what it takes, is have your healthy food first and then just have a spoonful, not a bowlful, if
Exactly.
and get that exercise, get that sleep, drink that water, 3 deep breaths. For some people, just sit still for a second, close your eyes, and take 3 deep breaths. Breathe out first because we're holding all this tension. We're tightening up. The diaphragm's not moving. The lungs aren't moving. So you breathe out first, and then you do 3 deep breaths. And that calms the system down. It lets the brain function better because the brain has to have that oxygenation. So, when you're moving and exercise, it's the same thing. You're increasing that oxygenation. And just calming the system down, whether that's a nice warm bath with Epsom salts for you, a walk in the woods. I'm a tree hugger. I love that. Love to be out there walking my dogs, hugging trees. And, I don't know what I would do without that time because that's my grounding. That's what helps keep me sane when the day is going off the rails. So, there are ways. We have some great supplements at Dover Apothecary. I carry a lot of great products in my home office, but I really invite people because inflammation it's definitely the global contributor to pain and dis-ease. And there's a lot we can do about it, folks.
Stop by Dover Apothecary, talk to Barb, talk to Mike about inflammation, see what you need to do to get yourself back on the right track. Barb, thanks for doing this. I've kept you long enough today. Take care, and we'll talk soon.
Thanks, Dave. Take care.